I grew up in New York, and I remember when his planes were repossessed off the runways at LaGuardia. I remember when they put out the documentary and he was talking about how poor he was. I remember the stories of him pretending to date Madonna, of him calling people and pretending to be his own publicist,
Yeah.
him lying about his book sales being number one. The man lies chronically,
Yeah.
like a teenage boy.
I read that you have a big problem with the show The Apprentice, and I do think you're right that it did sell people a bill of goods, and it portrayed something about him that just doesn't exist.
No, listen, it was
Yeah.
pure fiction, Jim.
Yeah.
It was pure fiction. To say that this man was a business giant when he had been bankrupt 6 times, to say he was a self-made millionaire when he got all his money from his daddy, to say that he was some moral authority when he had all these affairs on all of these wives and all of these sexual abuse charges. It was like Mark Burnett, the producer of The Apprentice, taught him how to take a lie, say it long enough, and make it the truth. He had a little family-owned grifter business in New York. He was a logo slapper. He didn't build buildings. He slapped his name on buildings that other people built. And usually they were not very high-quality buildings
That's
either.
true. Yeah.
And so if you grew up in New York, all of these facts were available to you, and daily you would get them in the newspaper.
Well,
So it wasn't a surprise.
And I remember when I covered him during the campaign in 2016, I would go into Trump Towers, the first time I had ever gone into Trump Tower. And I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And I go in there and I'm like, why is this place such a dump? Why does it look so shitty? Like the gold plating and stuff was kind of faded, and you would go down to the men's room and it was like, wow, this is kind of like Penn Station. I mean, it's not that.
Yes. Well, he has no taste. He's very gaudy. He thinks that gold lame will fool people. And, he would probably sell it as gold if he had a chance. His steaks went out of business. I remember somebody gave me, he had some liquor company at one point, and somebody gave me a closed bottle of his liquor with 2 bugs in it. Like there were 2 dead flies in it, and in a sealed bottle of liquor.
Wow.
And I kept it on my counter for many, many years. But this man has failed at almost everything he's ever tried.
Yeah.
And to think that so many people believe the lie that Mark Burnett told over and over. Mark Burnett, not born in this country. Mark Burnett, who made a lot of money off of this. I always said, does he have a conscience? Does he feel any remorse over what he let loose on our nation? Waiting for the country to right itself. I'm waiting for the people to stand up and say, no, this is not innately who Americans are. We are not cruel people. We are not people who don't care about our neighbors. We are people who do. I grew up on Long Island in the 1960s and 70s. And my mother died when I was 10. And you know who took care of us? The mothers in the other houses of suburban Long Island. They took care of us as if we were their own.
Wow.
And that's the America that I know and love. And
Me too.
of course, yes. And I want to come back, and I want this feeling as though you're better than someone that you can put into a group that you can name. The attacks on trans people when they're less than 1% of the population, the most vulnerable people that we have in the gay community, to attack the trans people is just so unbelievably un-American. It's un-American.
And it's almost as though you've been hearing me when I yell at the TV when those ads come on, because to me it is classic Trumpism in its rawest form. And that I think his mind tries to think of who is the most vulnerable population out there? What is the most vulnerable segment of society out there? And let me put my finger on those people. Let me pick on those people because it'll score points.
Yes, he does. He's trying to amass the underbelly of hatred that the civil rights movement started to address. And with the arrival of Donald Trump and the Republican Party, Mitch McConnell, I put in that list too, telling Obama that he would not help him in any capacity and would block him at every turn, and then doing it, not allowing him to appoint Merrick Garland, who I question whether or not that would be a good appointment now. However, they wouldn't appoint him because because they didn't want to and nobody made them. Like, that's what really gets me, Jim, is
Yeah.
I'm watching what Trump is doing with this man who he sent to El Salvador, who was innocent
Mm.
of any crime. And he is
Hasn't been convicted.
refusing. He is refusing due process, and he's refusing to let him come back,
Well,
to demand that he be returned. How
and
dare he?
I agree with you, and he has, made comments about maybe applying that to Americans, that he
Yes.
wants to go after what he calls the homegrowns. When the president of the United States starts talking about going after the homegrowns, it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning of this, Rosie, and I do think that we are in a place right now where it's not about left versus right, it's about pro-democracy versus anti-democracy.
I completely agree. It is no longer left versus right.
Yeah.
And I feel as though we on the left have to be more considerate and understanding of the lies that were fed to these people who are
Yeah.
not perhaps as knowledgeable about television production and whether or not the news is actually the news or entertainment. Many years ago, as you know, they switched the news from its own division with its own integrity into the entertainment department, and
And
the fourth estate was blown apart.
and look what's
And we
happening
need a
now with
fourth
60
estate.
Minutes and everything else.
Can you believe what's
It's a
happening? That
crying shame.
and I am so upset that ABC paid the money for George
Your
Stephanopoulos,
former company.
correctly, yes, calling him a rapist, which the judge has said, and
Yeah.
that they sued and they paid. And it reminds me of the stories we would hear in our neighborhood about the you know, guys who would show up and say, you owe us $250 a week, and you had to pay them. And
Yeah.
once you paid them, they had you for everything.
That's right. It
They
doesn't make
had
the
you
problem go
forever.
away. And that's the mistake
It
that's been
does
made
not
here in
make
the
the
US.
problem go away.
That's the mistake that's been made here in the US. People think, well, if I just put a quarter in the Trump intimidation racket toll booth, the problem will go away. And it doesn't make it go away. It means you got to keep going through the toll
No,
booth.
it doubles it, and it makes him do it bigger and more. Now he's suing 60 Minutes for billions of dollars, not just the millions that he got from ABC, but for
Yeah.
billions of dollars. And he has this Supreme Court full of his cronies that, are an embarrassment to the Supreme Court's legacy. And here we are in America going, we don't know how to stop him.
Yeah.
Well,
People have to start speaking out.
and having the courts and judges and people stand up and speak out. And that's what we must do. And don't let the fear of him stop you, no matter who you are, no matter what you think, because once democracy dies in America, it's over for the world.